Hey, church, Pastor Matt here. I just got out of a meeting with session and staff to talk about the future of worship and wanted to film a quick video to update you on where we're at with that. Obviously, the COVID situation is escalating a little bit, even as we see some hope for a vaccine. Many of you have come in contact with people with COVID. You've contracted COVID. Our guest preacher last week contracted COVID and wasn't able to come. So it feels like it's really pressing in. And really the big topic of conversation right now is on-site worship. Does it still make sense for us to have on-site worship when we could just as easily switch to Zoom? And I know that many of you would argue we got to move to Zoom. Why are we still doing on-site worship? We've got perfectly good worship on Zoom where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. I'm there. Others of you would say we have to be on site. That is the absolute best way to worship, and we lose something significant when we go on Zoom. And I think there's a lot of fair arguments that can be made in a lot of different directions. And I know faithful Christians and pastors that are disagreeing right now. And so where we're at is that we're going to continue doing on-site worship and Zoom worship. We're going to continue with our safety restrictions. We're going to continue to follow county guidelines. And we're going to continue to do on-site worship to the best of our abilities, trying to be as safe as we possibly can. We've not had an outbreak in the church yet, praise God. And so I think our safety measures are working. And I want to make clear how we reached this decision. This is not a decision where we all got together and said, we can never not have on-site worship. It's not right. Our decision is really rooted in Romans 14. And in Romans 14, Paul tells us that we should not quarrel over disputable matters. Is worshiping a disputable matter? Absolutely not. We must worship. Right? That's what Hebrews 10 says, is do not stop worshiping. We are designed and made to worship God. But I think the form in which we worship is a disputable matter. That is why people in the church are disagreeing on this. This is why pastors are disagreeing on it, because there's so many different things that we can point to or look at or emphasize to argue for on-site or not on-site worship. But I think it's a disputable matter. And when you read Romans 14, Paul talks about the fact that even if you are convinced that you are right on something disputable, what God calls you to do is to lay that aside for the sake of your brother or sister. He says, do not put stumbling blocks in front of your brother or sister. If they want to worship on site, if they want to worship on Zoom, and you think that that is absolutely foolish or wrong or whatever, if it's a disputable matter, let it go. Provide the space for them to worship, because ultimately that's our goal, is to be a worshiping people that are praising God and loving God with our whole hearts. And completely getting rid of on-site worship means that there's a whole chunk of people that are going to feel alienated, people that are not able to worship on Zoom as freely as they are on site. And we want to respect that. That can therefore be a stumbling block to other people. So whether we think we're right or we're wrong or whatever, the goal is just to worship. It's to worship. And so that's why we are continuing on with on-site worship. And again, let me stress, this is going to require us continuing to practice safety measures. It's going to require a lot of flexibility from the staff and from the leadership, which we've decided to take on. If people get sick or they can't come, we may have to make adjustments. There may be weeks where everyone has to shift over to Zoom because on-site worship's not going to work because Matt's sick and Emily's sick and Scott's sick, whatever it may be. This is a time for flexibility. But again, the end goal is to worship well and to provide people with as much opportunity to worship God as possible. So if you find this decision frustrating or you don't understand it, you can reach out to myself or a member of Session and we can chat about it. But I would really encourage all of us, read over Romans 14 and see the joy that Paul lays out, where he says you get to lay down your rights. You get to lay down your rightness for the purpose of helping somebody else have a clear conscience and to worship freely. And I think that's what we need in this time, is peace and unity and freedom just to go to God to the best of our abilities, however our conscience and our conviction lets us do that. So that's kind of the update on where we're at. Again, if you've got questions, reach out. But my goal is just for us to worship well in a time where we really, really need to worship well, church. So let us have pure hearts. Let us raise them up to God. And love you guys. Thank you for your flexibility and your grace during this hard time. Praying for you.